If you were forced, starting tomorrow, to navigate the rest of your life using only 100 specific phrases, what would you actually choose to pack in that linguistic survival kit?
That's a terrifying thought experiment right off the bat.
Right. Just think about it for a second. You are completely stripped of your entire vocabulary.
Yeah.
You lose your hyper-specific professional jargon. You lose your layered sarcasm.
Oh, I'd be lost without that.
Exactly. You lose the ability to weave this complex poetic narrative about your childhood. You only get 100 discrete utterances.
Just 100.
Just 100 to get you through the day, to keep you safe, secure resources, and somehow maintain your connections with people you love. So what actually makes the cut?
It's fascinating because when you really look at what is essential for human survival, you start to realize that much of what we say every single day is essentially, well, it's decorative.
Decorative. I like that word for it. It's just fluff.
Yeah, linguistic fluff.
So today, we are doing a deep dive into a document that claims to have isolated the absolute non-negotiable core of human communication. It is called the Lexicon of Fluency, 100 Essential English Phrases.
And it is an incredibly revealing document to look at.
Yeah.
Because examining a curated list like this it's fundamentally different from looking at a standard dictionary or, a grammatical textbook.
How so?
Well, a dictionary is agnostic. It just provides the tools without judgment. But a list of 100 essential phrases is heavily editorialized.
Right. Someone had to make the hard cuts.
Exactly. It's a blueprint of human priorities.
Yeah.
Whoever compiled this, or naturally, however these phrases organically rose to the top of our daily usage, they paint a very specific picture of what a human being needs to function in a society.
So it strips away the philosophical debates.
Yes. It leaves us looking at the bare mechanics of social navigation.
For you listening right now, the fascinating part is that you likely use a massive percentage of these phrases on pure autopilot.
Oh, absolutely. Dozens of times a day.
You deploy them without a second thought. But when we extract them from the messy flow of daily life and put them under a microscope, they reveal the hidden architecture of how we survive.
How we draw boundaries.
Right, and how we negotiate our reality. So our mission today isn't to just read a list of vocabulary words.
No, that would be incredibly boring.
We are going to forensically examine this lexicon. We want to figure out what it says about the human experience. Out of the millions of possible combinations of English words, why are these the ones that keep the gears of society turning?
The central question we need to keep returning to is not what the phrases are, but the underlying mechanisms they represent.
Okay, unpack that a little bit.
Well, language is a technology. It is a tool developed to solve specific environmental and social problems.
Like a hammer or a wheel.
Precisely. When we look at the phrases that make the top 100, we are looking at the solutions to the most common, most dangerous, or most critical problems a human faces. It tells a story of adaptation.
So let's start in the very beginning of that adaptation. Before anyone can negotiate a contract or ask for directions or buy a cup of coffee, they have to initiate contact with another human being.
And they have to do it without escalating into a physical confrontation.
Which is key. So the document opens with part 1, greetings, and part 2, polite expressions. The very first tool in the survival kit is establishing a shared temporal reality.
The time of day.
Right. The greetings are entirely tethered to the clock. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night.
The reliance on temporal markers for initial contact is deeply rooted in our evolutionary history.
Wait, really? How does saying good morning tie back to evolution?
Well, we don't just acknowledge the physical presence of another person. We first anchor our interaction in the shared rotation of the Earth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, from an agrarian and evolutionary standpoint, surviving the night and witnessing the morning was a shared victory.
You made it. The predators didn't get you.
Exactly. Saying good morning is a subtle, almost subconscious way of establishing common ground. You are essentially declaring, we are both awake. We are both experiencing this specific phase of the solar cycle, and we are entering into this day together.
I never thought about it like that. It provides an immediate, indisputable point of agreement before any actual information is exchanged.
It sets a baseline of reality.
Right, because if you were to walk into a room and completely bypass that temporal grounding, if you just walked up to a colleague at 8 a.m. and aggressively stated the printer is broken, it feels incredibly jarring.
It feels like a violation of protocol.
Exactly. After those time-based greetings, the lexicon provides the fundamental variables of contact, the formal hello and the casual hi.
And right alongside them, we get the absolute classic, how are you, coupled with the obligatory response, I am fine.
We have to break down how are you and I am fine because they represent such a weird, critical function in communication.
They really do. As we experience in our daily lives, this exchange is rarely a genuine inquiry into someone's physical or psychological state.
No, never. If you actually answered, how are you, with a detailed breakdown of your lower back pain and, your existential anxieties.
Another person would likely be completely taken aback. They'd start backing away slowly.
Right. These phrases function purely as phatic communication.
Yes.
Let's break down that concept for a second. It's kind of like a digital handshake.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Back in the days of dial-up internet, when two modems connected, they made that awful screeching static noise.
I can hear it in my head right now.
Right. They were syncing up. They were tossing data packets back and forth to confirm they were speaking the same protocol and that the line was secure before they transmitted any actual websites or emails.
Yes, the handshake.
How are you? And I am fine is the human equivalent of that modem screech. It's a ping to a server. Are you there?
Yes, I am here. And I am operating within normal social parameters.
Exactly.
That is an excellent way to frame it. In evolutionary biology, we actually see similar behaviors in primates.
Like grooming.
Exactly.
Yeah.
When chimpanzees groom each other, picking through fur, the primary function isn't always hygiene. It is the maintenance of the social network.
Just keeping the peace.
Right. It reinforces bonds and establishes hierarchy without the need for active conflict. Our boilerplate greetings serve the exact same purpose.
So we use them because they're easy.
We rely on them because of cognitive load. If we had to deeply, genuinely analyze our emotional state every single time we encountered another person, our mental energy would be entirely depleted within the first hour of the day.
We'd be exhausted by breakfast.
We use these linguistic macros to conserve cognitive calories for complex problem solving later on.
But the document doesn't stop at just establishing that the connection is active. Right after hello and how are you, it provides the tools for relationship maintenance.
Things like, nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you for establishing a new node in your network.
Yeah.
And long time no see for reaffirming a dormant connection.
And from there, the text immediately pivots into polite expressions.
This is where it gets incredibly revealing. We are given the tools of gratitude, thank you, and the escalated thank you so much, followed by their required reciprocations.
You're welcome and my pleasure.
Right. Then it outlines the tools of mitigation. Please, excuse me, sorry. And the escalation to, I'm really sorry. Finally, we get the absolutions, no problem, and it's okay.
This specific clustering of phrases represents the architecture of social friction.
Super friction.
Yes. Whenever two independent human beings interact, there is the potential for friction, a crossing of boundaries, a misunderstanding, a slight imposition.
Bumping into someone in the hallway.
Exactly. The mitigation tools are designed to smooth over that friction before it sparks a fire.
Okay, but this brings up a major structural question about human priorities. When you look at this survival list, apologizing and mitigating offense are presented far earlier than practical physical needs.
They are.
The tools to apologize are taught before the tools to ask for water or food or shelter.
Yes, which is fascinating.
I have to push back on the logic of this, though. Is avoiding a social faux pas genuinely more critical to a human's survival than finding a physical safe haven or securing hydration?
Historically speaking, absolutely.
Wait, really? More important than water?
The premise of your question assumes that an individual human is capable of surviving alone in the physical environment. For the vast majority of human history, that simply wasn't true.
Oh, because we were hunter-gatherers.
Exactly. To be exiled from the tribe meant certain death. The physical environment was too harsh, the predators too numerous, the acquisition of calories too difficult for a solitary ape.
So if you get kicked out, you die.
Therefore, your most critical survival asset was your inclusion in the social group. Anticipating and repairing social friction wasn't just about being pleasant. It was quite literally a matter of life and death.
That is intense.
When you look at the escalation from sorry to I'm really sorry, you are looking at the emergency protocols for maintaining your place in the tribe.
So an unrepaired social offense is actually a greater threat than a temporary lack of food, because the group is the mechanism by which you get the food.
Precisely. The group is the technology that keeps you alive.
That makes the distinction between, excuse me, sorry, and I'm really sorry if I don't, excuse me, feels preventative.
It is.
You use it when you need to briefly intrude on someone's physical or auditory space. Excuse me, I need to get past.
Right.
Sorry. Is the baseline repair for a minor infraction? You stepped on a toe or interrupted a sentence, but I'm really sorry is the heavy machinery.
It is deployed when there is a significant breach of the social contract.
And notice the absolute necessity of the corresponding absolutions provided in the text. No problem. And it's okay.
They are just as important as the apologies.
Because if you offer an "I'm really sorry" and the other person simply stares at you, the social fabric remains torn. The threat of exile still lingers.
Society requires a formalized mechanism for forgiveness. We need paired absolutions to finalize the repair process and confirm that the tribe is cohesive once again.
It's an essential release valve for social pressure. And the same psychological mechanic applies to the gratitude loops. Think about "you're welcome" or "my pleasure."
We throw those phrases around constantly.
We do, but they are crucial conversational bookends. Imagine you ask me to pass you a file. I hand it to you, you say thank you, and I just turn around and walk away in total silence.
It feels terrible.
It feels completely unmoored. It feels abrupt, cold, and strangely hostile.
The hostility you perceive in that silence is the result of an open loop. A request for a favor creates a minor social debt.
Okay.
The thank you acknowledges the debt. But until the provider of the favor issues a "you're welcome," the transaction is left hanging.
It's unresolved.
"You're welcome" closes the loop. It signals that the debt has been registered, accepted, and the social equilibrium is restored.
Without it, the brain just kind of freaks out.
Yes, the human brain registers an unfinished task, which creates lingering psychological discomfort.
So, through the mastery of Part 1 and Part 2, our learner has successfully established contact, avoided offending the tribe, and closed their gratitude loops. They are safe.
Within the group, yes.
Now they must navigate the external world. They have to move through physical space and engage in commerce. This initiates the transition into the next sections of the document: travel, directions, shopping, and money.
This is a significant evolutionary step for the speaker. They are transitioning from being primarily a social creature focused on group cohesion to an economic and spatial creature
focused on navigating infrastructure and resource acquisition.
Exactly.
The progression feels incredibly similar to the mechanics of a role-playing video game.
A video game.
Think about it. You spawn into a new, unfamiliar village. Your first task is to walk up to the non-playable characters and figure out the dialogue trees to establish a baseline rapport.
Ah, I see.
These are your greetings and apologies. Once they tolerate you, you have to extract spatial data to map the environment and then find the local merchant to haggle for the supplies you need for your quest.
The video game analogy actually holds up very well because game designers intentionally replicate the fundamental hierarchy of human needs.
They gamify survival.
Look at the spatial vocabulary the document prioritizes. Where is the station? Go straight, turn left, turn right. It's nearby, it's far.
It's all about moving through a grid.
It is entirely about orienting oneself in relation to fixed, essential landmarks. Human beings are profoundly territorial and spatial animals. Our anxiety spikes severely when we lose our mental map of our surroundings.
And right there, nestled among the directional commands, are these incredibly raw, vulnerable phrases. "I'm lost. Can you help me?" And "show me the way."
Followed naturally by the required gratitude loop. "Thank you for help."
Right, but the phrase "I'm lost" requires a total surrender of ego. You are walking up to a complete stranger, admitting a catastrophic failure in your own navigation systems, and placing your safety entirely in their hands.
Admitting "I'm lost" is a profound act of trust. You are temporarily stripping away your own autonomy.
Which is terrifying.
In a truly hostile environment, broadcasting disorientation makes you an immediate target for exploitation. But it is a calculated risk that is absolutely necessary for survival.
You have to risk it.
You cannot recalibrate a broken internal map without external data. The inclusion of "I'm lost" in this top 100 list proves that recognizing your own limitations and possessing the humility to vocalize them is a core survival skill.
Once that internal map is recalibrated and you finally find your way to the marketplace, the vocabulary completely shifts gears. We leave spatial orientation behind and enter the realm of value, transaction, and negotiation.
The anchor phrase here is, "How much is this?"
The foundational query of all commerce.
It is the initiation of an economic evaluation.
Then we have the phrases regarding the medium of exchange. Do you accept cash? And right beside it, can I pay online?
That is a very telling addition.
It really is. Now, a lot of standard survival guides might stick to universal timeless concepts, but the inclusion of "can I pay online" is a fascinating artifact.
It grounds the document in the present moment.
It proves this isn't some theoretical historical text. It is aggressively modern. The concept of digital invisible currency transfer had become so essential to daily human functioning that it bumps out thousands of other potential phrases to make the top 100.
It serves as a reminder of how rapidly technological infrastructure rewires our baseline needs. But the truly critical phrases in the shopping and money section are the ones dealing with subjective valuation.
Subjective valuation. So things like, "it's too expensive."
Yes, it's too expensive. Do you have cheaper? Give me a discount.
Those are powerful phrases. They require a significant amount of social confidence to deploy, especially if you are not entirely fluent in the language you're using.
They require the assertion of agency. Saying it's too expensive is a highly complex social maneuver.
Because you're causing friction on purpose.
Exactly. You are not simply stating an objective fact about the object's price tag. You are making a declaration about your own internal boundaries regarding value and resource allocation.
I decide what this is worth to me.
Furthermore, you are openly challenging the valuation presented by the merchant. It requires the speaker to comfortably invite conflict.
If you are too afraid of social friction to say it's too expensive, you will just pay whatever is asked. You will be depleted of your resources.
You'll go broke trying to be polite.
Right, so the polite mitigation we discussed earlier, the pleases and sorries, has to be temporarily suspended or recalibrated in the marketplace. If you cannot assert a boundary, you become entirely vulnerable to exploitation.
Exactly. This section demonstrates that fluency is not merely the memorization of vocabulary. It is the capacity to defend your own economic interests.
And this negotiation phase inevitably culminates in the phrases of final decision. I like this, I don't like this, that's perfect. And the ultimate closer, I'll take it.
I'll take it is the phrase of acquisition.
It shifts the state of the world. Before that phrase, the object belongs to the merchant. After that phrase, ownership transfers to you. It is a verbal contract.
It represents the successful navigation of the economic sphere. You have stated your preference, defended your resources, and secured the desired asset.
So let's look at where we stand in this journey. The individual has appeased the social group. They have successfully navigated the physical infrastructure of the city, and they have managed to barter for goods without being exploited.
They are doing quite well.
But what happens when the environment pushes back too hard? Not physically, but cognitively. We need to talk about information processing.
This is a crucial area.
When the volume or speed of communication coming at you is overwhelming, you need defensive tools. That brings us to part 3, daily conversation, and part 5, common responses.
We are moving from navigating the physical world to navigating the narrative flow of a conversation itself. It is about pacing and cognitive capacity.
The document arms the speaker with highly functional regulatory phrases. Wait a moment, just a second. Speak slowly. Call me later, and I'm busy right now. These are immediately followed by the core comprehension checks. I understand, I don't understand, and can you repeat?
We must consider the psychological weight of these specific phrases. They are mechanisms for asserting control over an incoming data stream.
They are shields.
They prevent the listener from being swept away by a current of information they cannot process.
When I look at speak slowly and I don't understand, I honestly think these might be the bravest, most difficult phrases on the entire list.
They certainly are the most avoided.
And we desperately try to avoid using them. We have an intense, innate fear of utilizing these conversational emergency breaks. Why is that? Why would we rather be confused than admit we need the data stream slowed down?
Because deploying those emergency breaks requires a public admission of a processing deficit.
It's an ego thing.
Ego is arguably the single greatest barrier to language acquisition and perhaps to clear communication in general. We are deeply conditioned, especially in professional or adult social environments, to project competence, speed, and total control.
We want to look smart.
To look someone in the eye and say, "I don't understand," requires significant humility. It lowers your perceived status in the immediate moment.
We sacrifice comprehension to protect our ego. Everyone listening to this has experienced the fake nod phenomenon.
Oh, yes.
You know the one. You are in a loud room or someone is explaining a complex technical concept and you completely lose the thread. But instead of saying, "Wait a moment, I don't understand," you just nod thoughtfully, offer a vague sound of agreement, and pray they do not ask you a direct follow-up question.
The fake nod is a survival tactic to maintain social status, but it fundamentally derails the communication system.
It breaks the whole machine.
If you do not use the emergency brakes, you are effectively opting out of the conversation while pretending to remain within it. You become a passive object rather than an active participant.
The lexicon recognizes that without the ability to pause the flow and verify comprehension, all other communication is built on a foundation of sand.
It is about taking ownership of your own cognitive limits.
And the document pairs these defensive pacing tools with methods for staking a claim within the dialogue. It provides the binary anchors of agreement and disagreement. That's good, that's great, sounds good, I agree, and I don't agree.
But more importantly, it provides a spectrum of ambiguity.
The gray area. Phrases like maybe, of course, no way, I think so, and I'm not sure.
The inclusion of phrases like maybe and I'm not sure is vital for psychological safety. Modern communication often tries to force individuals into a binary corner. We are pressured to deliver a definitive yes or no immediately.
Give me an answer right now.
These phrases offer a sanctuary of ambiguity. They allow the speaker to occupy a space of indecision while they process incoming data or evaluate their own boundaries. They buy time without severing the conversational tether.
You don't have to commit, but you are still participating. Now, while those phrases defend against incoming information, Part 4 outlines the tools we use to aggressively extract information from our environment.
The question.
It provides the core inquisitions. Where are you going? What is your name? How old are you? What do you do? Where do you live? What time is it? Why are you late? Who is this? Which one is better? And how can I help you?
This is essentially the investigative toolkit of the human mind. The classic who, what, where, when, why, and how.
Right.
We use these specific questions to categorize the strangers around us and map the social terrain.
Let's focus on what do you do and where do you live? Why are those universally prioritized across cultures? When you meet someone at a dinner party, what do you do is almost inevitably the second question asked right after, what is your name?
Because human beings are constantly attempting to determine the socioeconomic status, utility, and background of the people they encounter.
We're sizing each other up.
What do you do is a proxy for determining someone's resources, their daily focus, and their potential standing in the hierarchy. Where do you live establishes geographic background, which often carries cultural and economic implications.
It's rapid profiling.
We are building a rapid mental profile of the person standing in front of us to determine how we should interact with them. It is the social equivalent of mapping the physical environment.
We are trying to figure out where they fit into our network. And once we have mapped that social terrain, the phrases shift from passive observation and inquiry to active collective direction. The daily conversation section introduces phrases like, let's go.
Let's go is a crucial pivot point in the lexicon. It is an initiator of collective action.
It's not just about me anymore.
Exactly. It is distinct from the statement, I am going, which is solitary, let's go, is a proposition. It requires consensus. It unites two or more autonomous individuals in a shared physical and intentional trajectory.
And that concept of shared trajectory brings us to a major threshold in the source material. Up until this point, the learner has essentially been a tourist.
Yes, passing through.
They have been surviving, mitigating minor offenses, bartering for coffee, and asking strangers for directions. But mere survival isn't the entirety of the human experience. Eventually, you have to put down roots.
You transition from a tourist to a resident.
You enter the spheres of obligation, which the document outlines in Part 6 and Part 7. Friends, social life, work, and study.
This transition moves the language from the transactional to the structural. Building a life with others inherently requires managing both intimacy and duty.
Let's examine the intimacy side first. In the friends and social section, we find the phrases designed to initiate and maintain interpersonal bonds outside of a purely economic context.
The invitations.
We see invitations like, are you free today? Let's meet tomorrow. Let's hang out. Come with me. And we see the casual check-ins. What's up? And it's standard reflection. Nothing much.
As we discussed with how are you, this is another example of a verbal handshake that has lost its literal meaning over time.
Right. What's up is rarely a request for an itemized list of current events.
Or a description of the ceiling.
Exactly. It is a low-stakes ping. But the social section also provides phrases that carry profound emotional weight. Phrases that do the heavy lifting of maintaining a relationship over time.
See you soon. Take care.
Miss you. and keep in touch.
Miss you and keep in touch are fascinating because they function as a kind of emotional object permanence.
Emotional object permanence. Explain that.
In developmental psychology, object permanence is the understanding that an object continues to exist even when you can't see it. Babies don't have it at first.
Right. Peekaboo works because they literally think you vanished.
These phrases do that for relationships. When I say miss you, I am actively maintaining an emotional tether to you despite physical absence. I am confirming that you still exist within my mental landscape, and I am expressing a desire for our trajectories to intersect again.
It is the invisible glue that holds a dispersed society together.
That is a very precise way to conceptualize it.
Yeah.
It is the language of sustained connection across distance. However, when we move from the social sphere into the work and study sphere, the tone of the lexicon undergoes a dramatic and somewhat jarring transformation.
It is practically whiplash. We go from the warmth of take care and let's hang out straight into a wall of rigid obligation and status.
The demands of labor.
The document outlines phrases like, I have work, I am studying, I have a meeting, and I need help. And then it provides a list of highly specific, task-oriented directives.
Send me the file.
Check your email, finish your work, submit it today, let's start, and finally, good job.
The contrast is undeniable. If you look closely at these workplace phrases, submit it today, finish your work, they are incredibly blunt.
They really are.
They are entirely stripped of the linguistic cushioning we saw in part 2. There are no pleases, no excuse me's, no sorries.
It's just straight to the point.
It raises a compelling question about the culture of labor. What does it say about our society that the language of productivity is so devoid of traditional politeness? Does the workplace strip away our humanity?
You know, I think we have to redefine what politeness means in different contexts.
How do you mean?
Well, in a purely social setting, like a dinner party, politeness is entirely about mitigating friction and making sure everyone feels comfortable. But in a high-stakes, time-sensitive corporate environment, the rules of engagement change.
The objective shifts.
I would argue that in the workplace, ambiguity is actually a form of disrespect.
That's an interesting take.
Think about it. If a team is facing a strict deadline and a manager wraps a critical request in 5 layers of apologies and softening phrases, I am so incredibly sorry to bother you, but if you happen to have a moment, would it be possible for you to send the file? That is exhausting.
It wastes time.
It increases cognitive load. In that context, the most polite thing you can do is provide absolute clarity. Send me the file isn't infinitely rude. It is efficient, and efficiency is the highest form of respect when you are dealing with someone else's labor and time.
That is a very strong counter perspective. The hierarchy and the shared objective dictate the tone. The obligation to perform the job replaces the need for social mitigation. The task itself is the focal point, not the interpersonal dynamic.
It's about getting things done.
The language of work becomes the language of imperatives. However, the inclusion of good job at the end of that rigid list is highly significant.
It's the spoonful of sugar.
It is the necessary positive reinforcement. Even in a purely transactional, hyper-efficient environment, the human psychological need for validation remains.
We still need a pat on the back.
Good job is the workplace equivalent of the gratitude loop. It acknowledges the expenditure of labor and maintains the motivation of the workforce. It prevents the system from becoming entirely mechanistic.
All right, so let's review the journey of our linguistic traveler. They have successfully negotiated the external world. They established a shared timeline with greetings.
Check.
They navigated the physical infrastructure of the city. They defended their resources in the marketplace. They managed the flow of incoming data with emergency breaks.
And they successfully balanced the intimacies of friendship with the rigid demands of the workplace.
They've dealt with everyone else. But there's one final frontier, and the source text saves it for the very end. Part 10, Daily Life Expressions. This section turns the focus entirely inward.
We move from the external systems to the internal reality. This is the articulation of the self.
The document systematically deconstructs the I am statement. It begins by establishing baseline physiological states. I am tired, I am hungry, I am thirsty.
These are undeniable biological imperatives.
But then it elevates the language into the realm of complex emotional and mental states. I am happy, I am sad, I am excited, I am bored. And it concludes with a statement of profound readiness. I am ready.
The progression within this final section, from the physical body to the emotional mind to the state of intention, is deeply analytical.
But there is a massive structural question here. Why do the most fundamental universal expressions of human emotion, I am sad, I am happy, appear at the absolute end of a 100-phrase list? Why are they in part 10?
It does seem out of order.
You would assume that expressing your internal feelings would be priority number one for any human being. Why do we learn how to buy a coffee or ask for a file before we learn how to tell someone we are sad?
It seems counterintuitive at first glance, but the structure perfectly mirrors Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Maslow's hierarchy, the pyramid.
Yes. This hierarchy posits that basic physiological and safety needs must be met before an individual can focus on higher-level psychological needs or self-actualization. The lexicon follows this exact architectural path.
So survival precedes self-expression?
Precisely.
Yeah.
You cannot afford the luxury of deeply exploring or articulating the fact that you are bored or sad if you have not yet secured a mechanism for finding food, shelter, and physical safety.
Right, if you're starving, you're not bored.
If you are standing in a foreign environment, unable to ask, "Where is the station?" or "I am hungry," your complex emotional landscape is secondary to your immediate physical peril. The document structure implies that emotional fluency requires a foundation of physical and social security.
You have to be straight first.
You must first master the external world before you can safely invite others into your internal world.
That makes perfect sense. The assertion of "I am sad" requires a listener who has the capacity for empathy, which means you must have already used the tools in part 6 to build a friendship network. You can't just walk up to a merchant while haggling over a price and declare, "I am sad." Context is everything. And this brings us to the final, most resonant phrase on the entire list, the culmination of the "I am" statements.
I am ready.
I am ready. The document places it right next to the action initiators. Let's begin, and see you later.
The placement of "I am ready" as the closing physiological and mental state is a profound editorial choice. "I am ready" is an assertion of latent potential energy. It signifies that the internal preparation is complete.
It feels like standing on the edge of a diving board. It implies a transition from a state of learning and preparation into a state of execution.
You have packed the survival bag.
You have mapped the terrain. You understand the rules of the marketplace and the workplace. "I am ready" means the simulation is over.
Yes, and it is immediately followed by "let's begin," transitioning that internal readiness into external momentum.
Let's do this.
It signals that acquiring the language learning, these 100 phrases, is not the ultimate goal. The list is not the destination. It is merely the starting line for true integration into the complexities of human society. You have your tools. Now you must apply them to the chaos of reality.
And the outro of the source document hammers this thesis home. The text concludes with a final bit of instruction. Great job. You just learned 100 basic English phrases. Practice daily and try to use them in real life. Don't forget, consistency is the key to fluency.
It explicitly acknowledges that possessing the packing list isn't enough to survive.
You actually have to put the backpack on, walk out the front door, and engage with the world.
Fluency, as defined by this conclusion, is not a static state of being that you achieve and then lock away in a cabinet. It is an active, daily practice.
You have to keep using it.
It requires the courage to consistently engage, to risk the social friction we discussed, to endure the vulnerability of saying, "I don't understand," and to continue participating anyway. Consistency is the mechanism by which these foreign tools become natural extensions of the self.
It really is an incredible, almost heroic journey, embedded in what looks, at first glance, like a simple vocabulary list.
A very unassuming document.
We started with the very first temporal alignment of good morning, acknowledging that we survived the night together. We learned how to absorb the inevitable shocks of social friction with, "I'm really sorry." We asserted our boundaries and protected our resources in the marketplace with, "It's too expensive."
We swallowed our pride and pulled the emergency brake with, "Speak slowly."
We maintained the invisible tethers of our relationships with "miss you," navigated the rigid hierarchies of our duties with "submit it today," and finally arrived at the ultimate assertion of agency and potential. I am ready.
It is a comprehensive map of the human condition. And as we conclude our analysis of this lexicon today, I want to present a hypothetical scenario for you to consider as you go about the rest of your day.
Ooh, I love a good thought experiment. I'm ready for it. Let's hear it.
Imagine if, upon waking up tomorrow, you were bound to a strict rule. For an entire 24-hour cycle, your vocabulary was strictly, unforgivingly limited to only these 100 phrases. You cannot use a single word outside of this list.
Just 100 phrases.
What would happen? Would your life immediately grind to a halt because you lack the specific jargon to explain your job or the nuanced vocabulary to complain about your commute?
Probably, at first.
Or if you were forcibly stripped of all your usual complex linguistic crutches, your passive aggression, your over-explanations, your defensive sarcasm, would your communications actually become sharper?
That's the real question.
Would you find that having only one backpack of words forces you to be more direct, more honest, and perhaps profoundly more human in how you ask for what you need?
That is a brilliant thought experiment. We hide behind our massive vocabulary so often.
We use words as shields.
We use thousands of words a day to avoid simply saying, I am lost, or I need help, or I am sad. Stripping it all away might actually force a level of terrifying authenticity.
It would certainly change how we listen.
Think about that today as you deploy these essential phrases on pure autopilot. Try to feel the weight of what you are actually saying. Listen to the world and the architecture of how we connect, just a little bit differently today. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the true mechanics of fluency. Until next time, keep your communication clear, protect your boundaries, and we'll see you later.